Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest in BigPanda's webinar series on agentic IT operations. Today, we will be covering AI Incident Assistant and how AI can accelerate your incident management processes. Before we get started, I do need to cover some housekeeping items. First, please check out the tabs with resources at the bottom of your screen there. If you do have a question, please submit it in the Ask a Question tab, and we will do our best to answer it live, or we will address them after the fact. There will be an on-demand version of the webinar, which will be sent out to everyone after the webinar, and it will also be available on our website in our resource library. So with that, we can kick off our webinar, and I'm going to hand this over to Travis Carlson. He is the Senior Product Manager for our AI products.
Yep, thanks so much, Rachel. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll share my screen. And as Rachel said, my name is Travis. I am the Senior Product Manager for AI products here at BigPanda. And what we're going to look at today is our AI Incident Assistant, Biggie. And so let's go ahead and jump into that. And before we do, let's think about what's happening today in incident management. As your teams are working incidents, the cost of an outage is roughly $24,000, and that's not counting salaries or anything else. That's just the actual cost to your business when that outage occurs. In addition to that, usually we see an average of 86 engineers on a bridge call. So you have a lot of people on these calls trying to figure out what's going on. And this creates a lot of confusion around ownership, maybe not getting the right stakeholders involved, and just difficulty getting that large of an audience to collaborate and work together on an incident. And what we also see is 25% of the MTTR during these incidents is just spent kind of waiting for information as some or all of these 86 folks on the call are looking something up, checking something, validating certain data. There's just kind of dead time as people are waiting because there's investigation that has to take place and knowledge that has to be found in different systems. And even once you resolve the incident, things aren't done. It takes on average 7 hours to complete all of the post-incident paperwork. So there's lots of kind of missing documentation or missed insights sometimes because you're constantly firefighting. You don't have time to do all that paperwork. Or it's kind of taken away from the other work that you need to focus on. And furthermore, 34% of incidents are caused by planned changes, meaning your own change is actually what started this incident in the first place. So we're kind of causing our own issues. And so I want to kind of make a bold claim here, which is, in the future, managing incidents without AI is going to be considered negligence. And what do I mean by this? If we think about it, without AI, today we're relying on manual investigations, brute force collaboration, and there's lots of kind of post-incident failures. And, in manual investigations, your teams are swiveling between multiple observability tools, wasting lots of valuable time trying to hunt and find that key piece of knowledge or context from that incident that happened 6 months ago, or, hey, I think we have a run book. Where the heck is that? There's that manual aspect that is slowing teams down as they work on incident response. And back to that number of 86 engineers on a call, you're just bringing everyone onto the call. It's like, hey, who do we page? Who do we involve? You know what? Let's just get everyone on the call to hope that we get the right team there to solve the problem. And by the way, as you're pulling all these people in, we've heard from a lot of customers that a lot of the time they wind up spending during a bridge call is someone joins and says, hey, could you catch me up? What have we done so far? And you're recapping the status of the incident versus actually investigating and working towards the resolution. And again, on the post-incident side, there's lots of paperwork and documentation that just has to be done, but is pulling your teams away from other work that they could be doing, more strategic work. And then even a lot of times when you do take the time to document these incidents, there's a failure to actually use that to learn from the past incidents, maybe because no one knows where it's at or they can't find it in the heat of the moment the next time there's a similar incident. And so it's both painful to generate the post-incident data and sometimes it's hard to find, and then we wind up not getting the value that we thought we would out of it. And this is actually where AI can really help in a lot of these challenges. And so, again, with our product, it's our AI incident assistant that we call Biggie. And Biggie is always there. It's a partner for your teams that's going to help work these incidents, resolve them faster, and prevent them in the future. And it's really focused towards our L2 and L3 SMEs, SREs, service owners, incident managers are some of the key users of Biggie. And it's really helping to automate the investigations that they have, really improve and streamline their collaboration, and like I mentioned, prevent those future incidents from occurring. And so if we kind of just double click into Biggie, our AI incident assistant, there's really four main areas that Biggie helps with. First is around investigation. So how can we help to speed up investigation to find those key points of data across, your knowledge base articles, your past incidents? How do we bring that to the surface and make that available when and where it's relevant so your teams have that key context and information? For collaboration, it's really how can Biggie help to assemble the team to bring together the right folks on a call to resolve the incident quickly? And also, how can we help automate and speed up that post incident documentation and to do it consistently, reliably, and in seconds? For automation, this is really about how do we empower the engineers and the experts within your organization, those SMEs, to automate as much of the incident response work as humanly possible so that it's happening immediately when we identify the incident, surfacing that relevant information, helping to speed up our resolution time. And it also lets those folks on your teams focus on the strategic work that they have versus constantly firefighting these major incidents. And the final area is prevention. And here we want to take a step back and look at, okay, how do we actually prevent these incidents from happening in the first place? And so how do we actually look at all those hundreds or thousands of planned changes to identify those risky ones and hopefully hope to identify and mitigate the risk so that we avoid that incident in the first place? And everything that Biggie does is powered by the IT knowledge graph that we have. So this is leveraging all sorts of data from internal observability, external observability, CMDBs, change data, your service history from ITSM, runbooks, informal knowledge, lots of different sources feed into this knowledge graph and then power everything that we're able to do with Biggie. And so in particular, we're going to look at a couple different areas. And first, we're going to look at investigation and collaboration. And I'm going to show you some of the capabilities Biggie has around agentic troubleshooting and agentic assembly. Then we're going to take a look at automation and how can we use the agentic workflow automation builder that's there in Biggie to automate some of the work that teams do and surface that investigation and information automatically. And then finally, we'll look at prevention and we'll do actually a deep dive into our change risk management to understand how are we looking for identifying risky changes and helping you to mitigate that risk. And before we do it, I just want to step back and think about all these different capabilities, these things that the teams are doing during an incident and how long this manual process takes. And it takes, minutes to hours of time for teams as they have to go search for, relevant historical incidents, check the monitoring and observability tools, look for recent changes, call the service desk and see if something's going on. Is there a spike in tickets? All these different things that are normal parts of that incident response, but they take time, they slow down the investigation, and most importantly, the resolution of that incident. And so as we go through this, we'll see how Biggie can help with these and what that means in terms of how long that's going to take you as you begin to leverage AI. So with that, let's actually hop directly into our demo. And I actually want to start not with Biggie, but actually with BigPanda. Because again, within BigPanda, with our AI detection and response, we've actually detected this incident. So we have here an incident. We have 60 different alerts that we've correlated together, and it looks like it's a critical P1. This looks like it's a big deal. And if we look here, we actually see it's a critical network issue in our Florida ATMs. There's some sort of issue going on. And so how do we get our team spun up and working on this as quickly as possible? And that's actually where Biggie comes in. So you can see here, we've actually already shared this to Biggie, and Biggie's notified your teams in Slack or in Microsoft Teams. And so we actually see here that what we have is a notification sent in our Slack channel, and it's walking through a little bit of information about this issue. It's telling us kind of what's going on, that we're seeing lots of different routers and switches in this Florida region where we're not seeing connectivity. We're having IP tunnels that are removed. So, something pretty serious looks like it's affecting our ATMs and most importantly, our customers in the area. And one of the things that Biggie does right away is it's actually making a suggestion. It's saying, hey, you should start a channel for a major incident. And it's doing that because Biggie has learned from the past and said, hey, when I've seen things like this, you've always started a major incident. This looks important, looks very similar to that. You should go ahead and start a channel and get your teams engaged right away. So I'm going to go ahead and take Biggie's advice and get this started. And because this came from an incident in BigPanda, it's already pre-populated with all the information. You can also start these manually. You just have to then populate that data. And one of the first things that we've heard from customers can be challenging is, hey, who do I engage? How do I make sure I get the right teams involved? That's why you often see 86, 100 people on the bridge call, because we're not sure. So we just get everyone. But Biggie really wants to help you laser focus on getting the right teams engaged from the start. And so if I ask Biggie to help me suggest teams, it's going to look at all the information for this incident. It's going to look at my on-call platform and then tell me which team or teams does it think I should include. And so actually we see here, it came back and said, hey, you should include the network engineering team. That's who it thinks we should page. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. And Biggie's going to spin up a channel. It's going to start a bridge call. It's going to page that network engineering team that I saw earlier. And so we see here, Biggie's already sent out the page. I've integrated the PagerDuty. That's who's I'm using to send this notification. And at the top of this, we see a kind of a banner message that's been pinned. And this is actually going to keep kind of the current status of the major incident right here. And over time, as the team is talking about this, working on resolving the incident, this banner is not static. It's going to update with the latest information that the team is talking about, because Biggie's here in this channel, paying attention to what the team is doing, and then updating this where it's relevant so that we always know the latest status. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off our troubleshooting capabilities with Biggie, and I'm going to click this button where it's going to run some historic troubleshooting. And I'm also just going to ask Biggie, hey, show me the health of my Florida ATMs. Tell me what's going on with my observability related to these ATMs in Florida, and what do we see? So we can see that came back, and it's actually Biggie had reached out to both Datadog and Splunk. Those are the observability tools that I'm using here. And it's letting me know that, yeah, we're seeing several of the Florida ATMs having, some intermittent outages, slowdowns. We're seeing lots of issues with synthetic checks and logs. And then we get into a little bit of detail. It's actually showing us some examples from Datadog where my synthetic tests are failing. And then some of my Splunk logs where I'm seeing things like VPN tunnels being dropped. In this case, there's 50 additional logs, so there's obviously something going on. And for readability, it just showed me a couple examples. And I can go look at everything if I want here by clicking this link. But the key takeaways is, hey, it looks like we're seeing a set of issues. This all points to some sort of certificate issue or configuration, that's happening, that's affecting this. And if I come back up here to my historic troubleshooting that I ran, we can actually take a look at that. And we always start with a quick TLDR. We know teams are in a hurry, so sometimes you just want to get the punchline. And what we see here is that, hey, you should check for recent network changes or hardware failures, and potentially escalate as needed. It goes through any of the times we've seen something like this in the past. So that's this explanation here where it's found similar historic incidents in ServiceNow. And it's letting me know what happened and how did we fix it last time. It's also letting me know who are the teams, who are the people that were engaged last time. We've seen things like this. And so we see that network engineering team. So we've got the right folks engaged right from the start. So that's great. It even mentions actually Susan, who we had paged. So seems like we're definitely getting the right folks engaged from the start. We see things about the priority, the impact, and most importantly, at the end, we actually see diagnostic and remediation steps. So how can you actually resolve or remediate this issue? And so it's walking you through this based on what it found in your SOPs, your wikis, those past resolution notes from historic incidents. It's putting all that together in a single set of steps. We saw that comment about checking changes, and you even see that here saying, hey, look out for recent changes. So given all that and what we saw with the observability, I'm actually just going to go ahead and ask Biggie to check and see, have we seen any recent changes that I should be worried about? And so we'll give that a second for that to come back. And you can see we actually have some folks joining the call, starting to talk about what's going on. And Biggie took a look at my recent changes. I asked it the last 24 hours, and it did find one. It said, actually, here's this change. I've got a link to it in ServiceNow. And essentially, I was deploying an update to my SSL certificates in the Florida region. So that actually lines up with exactly what we're seeing. We can see now the teams here talking about it, and Biggie's already got a lot of information for them. One thing you'll notice is this banner message is updating again as the team is joined. They're talking about it. You can see here it actually identified its own message. Biggie did, where it said, "Hey, this recent change looks like it's potentially the issue." And if we come down here and just see what the team's talking about, there's our friend Susan from network engineering. And she said, yeah, Biggie found the change. She kind of did a little bit of looking and said, yeah, that's definitely the issue. And she's going to go ahead and roll it back. And so if we come back up, we can actually see it's taking note of this. So, Biggie actually captured the action item that Susan mentioned of rolling it back. And then it checked it off because Susan said rollback was complete. So again, Biggie is keeping track of what's going on, letting your team really focus on the investigation and the resolution, and not necessarily some of the details and note taking and tracking of information. So it looks like now we're seeing everything come back up, which is great now that we've rolled that change back. And if we go back up to the top, what we're going to see is, all this information reflected. We've got the suspected root cause. We've got some information that this is now done and just being monitored. And so what we're going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and have it generate a postmortem. And again, this is that paperwork that sometimes takes hours for teams to generate. I'm just going to have Biggie go ahead and run this for me, look at all the information here in the ticket, and generate a postmortem that has, essentially a full document of what happened, what did the team do, what action items and things do we need to do to follow up on this. So I'm going to go ahead and open that here. And this is the one I just ran. And I'll make this just a little bit bigger. And so what we see is kind of a high-level executive summary. You can see here it's got the incident ticket, the change record that we found and rolled back, describes what happened, as well as how it was resolved and any follow-ups. It does also create a really detailed timeline. And there's kind of two pieces. On the left-hand side, Biggie's looking to identify some of those key MTTX metrics, so things like time to assign, diagnose, recover, and resolve. And we're also capturing a really detailed set of metrics around everything that happened. So here we have, when we paged the team, that health check that Biggie did for us, when we found that recent change. Again, some of those key events and milestones over the course of this incident are here. Any of the action items that we captured and talked about, as well as suggested action items. So things that maybe no one said that we should do this as an action item, but Biggie thinks after watching the investigation, hey, these would be helpful things that you might want to consider doing, like a certificate update run book. That seems reasonable, or maybe even a peer review for our network certificate deployments, etc. It's going to capture all of the folks that were participating in this, along with little helpful badges for like key contributor, top contributor. And if you expand them, we'll actually see how they contributed to the conversation. And then the final piece is this event log. And it's basically telling you everything that happened over the course of this incident in a lot more detail. So we kind of start from that high level exec summary and get more and more detailed as we go down this report. But essentially now we have something that we can share out. And not only can we share this out, we can actually capture this knowledge and send it back into Biggie. So this becomes knowledge for the future that Biggie can draw upon. So we're constantly learning from these incidents and getting smarter and getting, hopefully able to identify more quickly and resolve these incidents in the future, if not avoid them altogether. So with that, I want to kind of switch gears. Everything you saw here was me interacting with Biggie, asking questions, and then using that natural language integration or interaction model with Biggie. But we also have our workflow automation where you can actually have Biggie automatically just out in the background working. And so I want to take a look at an example there. And so I've got a different Slack channel here for my knock. And maybe I'm going to post a message and say, hey, maybe I saw some issues when I was using SSO, and I just want to ask my other peers in the knock, hey, has anyone else seen errors or alerts with SSO? And what I have set up is I actually have Biggie set up to monitor this channel and see essentially any sort of messages that talk about alerts and errors and an application. And if so, it's going to trigger a workflow. So let me actually just, while that's running, I'm going to show you what that workflow looks like. And there are two types of workflows. They're what we call channel hawks. So these are the ones that I just mentioned where it's watching a certain channel in Slack or in Teams and then responding when certain conditions are met. We also have scheduled workflows, things that might run every hour, every day, every week, and then post results. Excuse me. So if we look at this one here, this is my autonomous investigation. This is what's running right now. And what I've done is I've assigned that to a certain channel, that global knock channel. I've also given it the trigger condition. And that's what I mentioned earlier about, hey, if someone asks about errors, failures, alerts, and a specific application or service, then you should trigger. And again, I didn't have to know prompt engineering to do this. I actually used this generation mode. So I just said, if anyone mentions alerts, issues with an app, and all that, that's all I had to type. And then I actually let Biggie help me generate this. And it created a very nice, well-structured prompt that will be used for this in the future. So lots of great things where it can kind of help you, even in the configuration. Then I actually did the kind of the workflow that I wanted. And I just did this by drag and drop, right? You come in here and you can select from Biggie's existing action plans, the existing capabilities that Biggie has, and essentially build out what you want Biggie to do. In this case, I'm having it reach out to my observability to find information, run troubleshooting to see how we've resolved things like this in the past. I'm having to decide whether or not it's gathered enough information that it's worth continuing or if it should just stop. Looking at ITSM for recent changes, et cetera. So I'm doing lots of different things that, again, I might manually have to do this. Otherwise, I'd have to spend a lot of time checking observability tools, going into my on-call system, going into my ServiceNow or my Jira or whatever ITSM I happen to use to hopefully find this information. Instead, Biggie's going to automatically do this. I can also give Biggie very specific criteria on when it should actually respond. But in this case, I'm just letting Biggie use its best judgment. I just said, Biggie, you decide when it's worth responding with something. And then I gave it a bit of instruction on the format that I want to see. So if we come back here, we can see Biggie's already responded. And what did it tell me? It said, okay, yeah, we're seeing some active alerts in Dynatrace with SSO. The root cause appears to be a recent load balancer software image update. And your next steps are to coordinate with your SSO and network engineering teams to roll that back. So how did it know that? Well, first it checked with Dynatrace with Davis AI. and it was able to see that there was an issue with our SSO service. We were seeing the spike in errors. It also reached out to my CMDB and found all the components that make up my SSO application. So it found the servers I'm using. It found my network devices, in this case, a switch and a load balancer. We had it look for, hey, how have we resolved issues, SSO issues in the past like this? And it's telling me a couple different things. The first one is, hey, correlate the timing of this with recent changes, et cetera. So that's interesting. I also see the relevant recent change. So I actually see this change here where we updated the software image for that load balancer that supports our SSO application. And it gives a lot of detail here that it pulled from ServiceNow on that change. And we went ahead and pulled our relevant on-call. So we said, hey, we need the on-call for the SSO team, as well as our network team who's responsible for the load balancer, so that we can actually try to resolve this. So that's how it dug through all that information to come up with a very quick TLDR that tells me exactly what's going on and what I need to do next to resolve the issue. So let's change gears now and let's talk a little bit about change risk management. How do we prevent these incidents from happening in the first place? So I want to actually come back here to our web application for Biggie, and I'm going to come into our change risk dashboard. And so here we're actually looking at all of my planned changes over the next 30 days. And I want to see, what are my risky changes? Well, we've actually scored the risk for all of these changes. And we said, hey, this one right here, it's critical risk. It's 84 out of 100 in terms of the risk score, meaning highly risky, high likelihood that this could cause an incident when this change is pushed. And the first page is just all the change details. So everything you might want to know about this change, what it's doing, etc. But the real meat of this, the interesting part is, hey, how did I get to this risk score? Tell me what's going on. And so here we actually have the details. So this is how are we calculating that? There's actually 5 categories that we look at when measuring risk. So we look at implementation risk, topological impact, the team and individual responsible for the change, the historical incident risk, meaning have similar changes like this caused incidents in the past. And finally, organizational specific risk. So these are actually specific things that you can tell Biggie that you consider at your organization risky. So is it certain times of the year, times of day, et cetera, things that might be specific to your org that you want Biggie to assess and then add additional risk points when it's creating this. And all this is very much configurable by your admins, both the weighting as well as this org risk criteria. And all of this then is weighted together to generate that risk score of 84. But that's not enough. We need to also tell you why did we find it this risky? These scores are great, but let's actually explain what that means. And that's what our risk reasoning is for, where we get into a lot more detail. And so, for example, we might say something like this: hey, in the past, when you've done a change like this, you did not perform a rolling restart. There's no indication in your implementation plan that you're going to do a rolling restart. That's a risk. And we don't stop there. Biggie's also going to suggest how you can mitigate those risks. And so you can see for that example we looked at, one of the very clear steps it says is, hey, go update your change plan and perform the rolling restart once you've made the changes to your Redis cache. That's going to help you to maintain service availability as you're pushing out this change. So very specific, mitigation steps and even the risk reasoning to help your teams understand what can they do to try to avoid an incident for this. And we also have lots of detail, in these other tabs here that goes into the historical incident risk or team and individual risk, et cetera. So you can drill into each one of these categories to understand how did Biggie come up with the score that it did. And so with that, I kind of want to wrap our demo up. And what we saw over the course of our demo really was how Biggie is helping across investigation and collaboration to bring the right team together to keep everyone aligned over the course of the incident, helping to speed up and automate that post-incident analysis, how it's helping with the investigation, how it's looking across all your different tools, the data sources, finding relevant details and information and surfacing that in seconds for your teams. And with automation, you don't have to wait for someone to ask her this information. Biggie can be out there working alongside your team and automatically retrieving relevant information before someone even asks for it. And then finally, we looked at prevention and how can we avoid these incidents from happening in the first place. And so I want to come back to this screen again. And if you think about all these things that were taking minutes and hours of time, what we saw over the course of this is that with Biggie, these things are taking seconds to complete, drastically speeding up that incident response time for your teams and making it so they can more quickly restore service for your applications, for your services, and avoid that downtime in those major incidents. And what this really means is less manual toil and frustration, less time spent firefighting, faster recovery, and more time freed up for your teams to really focus on delivering business value, not firefighting. And so with that, I'll go ahead and wrap things up and hand it back to Rachel.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Travis. Thank you for giving us the overview of AI Incident Assistant. I hope everyone is really excited to see a truly pragmatic use case of AI and how it can make a meaningful impact on incident management teams and processes. So again, thank you everyone for joining. It does unfortunately look like we are at time for our webinar. And so if you did have any questions that come through, we will follow them up afterwards with a direct response. I want to take a minute to highlight our next webinar in the series. That will be next week, July 16th, on the IT Knowledge Graph. It is our knowledge and data fabric that supports not only the AI Incident Assistant, but the BigPanda platform as a whole. So please, I highly recommend you check out our next webinar. Again, anyone who registered will get a follow-up email with any answers to questions as well as the on-demand version. In the meantime, if you are interested in learning more about AI Incident Assistant, please head to our website to set up a demo. Thank you, everyone, and take care.